Hey, welcome to the Church Explained podcast, a conversation to grow your leadership and build your church. We're excited today. We've got something a bit different today, Nathan, haven't we?
Yes, we are at our staff retreat as Icon Church, and we've had two of our great friends, Steve and Rachel Mawston, with us. And so we thought, well, whilst we're here, let's do a Church Explained podcast, a little bit about what we've been speaking about at staff retreat, but then also a little bit of exciting stuff that Rachel's got coming up. So you need to stay tuned in for that. If you don't know who Steve and Rachel are, firstly, they're the greatest people on the planet. We've just told them that. But also they're passionate about the church, devote their whole lives to following the call of God, building his house and the lives of others. Currently, they're based at Soul Church in Norwich, England, with their lifelong friends and senior pastors John and Chantel Norman. They're part of the senior leadership team there, and they've seen that church grow numerically and in influence. So, Steve and Rachel, it's great to have you on the Church Explained podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Welcome. And of course, not only do they do the stuff at Soul Church, but further afield as well. Do a lot of traveling, coaching, leadership stuff as well. So that's great to find out about as we go through. So we're excited to have you here because, as we've said, it's a little bit different with the Church Explained podcast today. One, it's our staff retreat. So this is almost like a behind-the-scenes staff talk, but like with an extra layer in there, okay? So you're really, anybody who's watching in today or listening in, you're really behind the scenes of Icon Church, and you're finding out some of the stuff we've been going through and talking through even the last couple of days. Great to have you guys here.
Thank you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, more than what we've put in the bio, maybe about your ministry, your role, your life, and maybe a little bit of what you do for fun as well.
Yeah. Well, firstly, we're obviously married.
Yeah.
Very much in love.
We should have said that already, shouldn't we?
Nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
Wow,
April.
congratulations.
Anniversary. We met when I was 12 and he was 13.
Ah.
At a youth camp.
Yeah, and I then chased her for 10 years and finally landed the fish.
Yeah.
So, as you can see, I've done very well. So,
Yes.
so
I've done
we've
well.
been married for nearly 30 years, got two beautiful girls, Melody, who's 23, and Mercy, who is 18, just to do
two
her
adults
A-levels.
now.
Yeah. Wow, we love them to bits.
They both love church. They both love ministry. Melody actually oversees the worship at Soul Church.
Amazing.
And we lived in Australia for 15 years. We were pastoring over there and just moved back to our roots 4 years ago. 4.5 years ago.
And what do we do for fun? Well, I love to play golf. I love any sport, really, Manchester United fan. And I love, quirky little fact, bodyboarding, which was great in Australia, but in Cromer in the North Sea, it is a very seasonal affair.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I do love to get amongst it.
How cold is the North Sea?
Well, it gets to around 5 degrees,
Yes.
so you need a full wetsuit and you need...
I want to know this because I was baptized in the North Sea.
Were you?
And all I can remember, it was freezing.
Pain.
It is freezing, mate. You get a total head rush.
It wasn't
It was
one of those
literally dying
moments
to
where it's
yourself.
like the glory of the Lord came upon me.
There was no doves.
This was
Yeah.
freezing.
No,
Get me
no.
out of here quick.
No doves were coming down.
No.
But
It's
then
brown.
if you do paddleboarding, which is my favourite thing, and you're good at balance, you don't have to fall in the water.
That's right.
So,
That's right. So
paddleboarding I love.
You've got the better skill. That's what you're saying.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
The core balance.
A bit of competition here. That's what's
Yeah.
going on
That's
this
it.
morning.
Coffees are a good thing. I love catching up with people for
Yeah.
coffees, afternoon teas.
Good coffee.
Good
Really
coffee.
good coffee.
Yeah, you got to have good coffee.
Yeah.
So we found out a little bit about you guys, a little bit about your ministry. Do you want to say anything more about your faith journey? How did you come to faith? Maybe a little bit about that.
Well, I was brought up in church. My parents were pastors. They actually pioneered what is now Soul Church, but next year it'll be 60 years since that started. So my granddad and then my parents. So I had the privilege of growing up in ministry, and I think it wasn't until I moved away to university, I studied at Teesside physiotherapy. That's when I really had an encounter with God for myself, and I knew that I wanted to make a difference and wanted to talk to my friends about Jesus. And at a time when you're away from home, it can be a time when a lot of young people can drift away. There were moments where it could have been at a crossroads, but it just really made my faith strong.
I wonder if you actually, just jumping off, I wonder if you'd speak into that, because I think the stats are that it's around 45%, might not have it exactly right, but 45% of people young people who were in church at 18 here in the UK would go to university and wouldn't continue in their faith. So I wonder if you could speak maybe into like just even a church leader or churches. What can you do to encourage people to do that and help people to do that? Yeah.
It's a very real issue because my daughter's 18.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
we're at
last
that
week
process.
she went and checked out at university. So here's the way I'd see it. It's really important. Think about the church that they're going to go to before the university.
Yeah.
Right.
So she's checking out a great university up north, but we also know that Glow Church is there.
Yeah.
So we're thinking ahead is let's help her get into a great church and attend university in that order rather than the other way around because they're spiritual. You know, I remember Robert Ferguson talking to me once in Australia and he really challenged me. He said, Steve, when it comes to your kids' minds in the Bible, you only ever entrusted their minds to a priest. That really challenged me. So think about where they're going to be spiritually impacted before they're going to be intellectually impacted.
Wow.
Yeah.
And as a pastor and leader, I think it's important to get them up and pray for them before they go. So it gives that accountability, both in youth and in main church, that this person is gone. Let's keep them in our thoughts and minds and prayers. Let's keep contacting them. And there needs to be that accountability. I know I had people doing that for me. But I remember one particular night, all my friends were saying, come on, let's go. They wanted to go out clubbing. And I remember feeling strongly that I wanted to fit in. But I made a decision in that moment, not because I was super strong or spiritual. I just knew that wasn't the way for me. I could see the fruit of their lives. I lived in a house with 3 other girls that weren't Christians. And I remember staying in that night and just feeling quite sad that I thought I was missing out. And I had the most amazing encounter with God in my bedroom. Wow. And I remember there were tears and I literally felt his love fill my heart and fill the room, saying, Rach, when you've got this, why would you want to try and fill that with these other things? And it really sustained me. That and some quality friendships.
Great.
So
Picking the right friends.
that inner two good things are accountability
Yeah.
and making that wise choice. I mean, that is a bit of a wise choice and a bit of a culture shift, Steve, really, if we think about it. Choosing university, choosing church first, then university. That takes a bit of courage, I think, from parents as well.
Yeah.
To think through that.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
definitely.
So well done on that.
Yeah.
So hey, listen, you've been sharing with our staff, both of you. So it's been fantastic. We've really appreciated that. Steve, you shared yesterday morning with us around this idea of being pressed, but pressing on. And I wonder if we could just explore that a little bit because there was so much good stuff in there. And
There was.
Yeah, and I think it really helped a lot of the listeners, a lot of the leaders
Yeah,
who are maybe
definitely.
leaning into this because actually we all face pressures in life. So what was your motivation? Sounds like a real movie sort of question.
Yeah.
But what was your motivation? What was your thinking of bringing such a message?
Look, I think for every leader, we know that being in ministry can have pressure. Pressure is something we all face. And it actually came out of a conversation, again, with Robert Ferguson. We were talking about preaching. And he mentioned that scripture about being hard-pressed but not crushed.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think ministry is a place where we feel hard-pressed, but thank God not crushed. And I know I told that funny story about an experience I had at church, at Hillsong Church, and this goes back 15 years, when Phil Dooley and Sanger asked me to be involved in the annual animated Bible story, which was the most theologically unsound event in the life of the church. And it involved me being hoisted up to the roof of the Hillsong Convention Centre and being dropped. And I was dressed in a chicken suit.
He was the dove with love from above.
Dove with love from
In
above.
Noah's Ark.
And it was a crazy event. But what they didn't know is that 6 weeks previously, I just had a little op. It begins with V and ends in vasectomy. And so when I was hoisted up, my feet were in stirrups and I was literally dropped from maybe 100 feet.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when I was dropped, my feet slipped out of the stirrups. And so I was dropped, and it was a very, very painful experience. So I knew what it was to be hard-pressed, but not crushed. The point I made was that the enemy knows your vulnerabilities. We all have pressure points. And in ministry, you know, the enemy went straight after Jesus in Matthew 4 when he just fasted for 40 days. And the Bible said he was hungry. What was his first temptation? Turn these stones into bread. So the enemy does know your pressure points. And, You need to make sure you're aware of his devices if you're going to survive in ministry. That was the motivation.
That you mentioned as well. Obviously, the whole crowd were laughing because they were seeing your grimacing face at the time. So they did it again.
Yes.
They actually
And again.
Yes.
and again, and it just kept going. And literally, pain was shooting through my body. So thanks, dude.
Well, that's a good biblical number, the three. Do you know what I mean? So maybe they were just on to something there.
But you mentioned that whole the enemy knows how to press us, and we feel pressure. I wonder if you could share like some of the things that we can do as leaders and as people who follow Jesus. How do we withstand that pressure? How do we, your title, I love your title because it kind of explains it. We're pressed, but we're pressing on. So how do we keep pressing on?
Yeah, and I talked about the pressure that we face externally.
Yeah.
And I used the illustration of me diving down for a baseball cap in the Mediterranean. I got halfway down and I couldn't swim any further because the pressure was building in my head, in my ears. So I turned around and swam back to the surface. But then I thought about a submarine. How the heck do they dive down, sometimes a mile deep? How can they withstand that pressure? And the answer is really simple. It's that in a submarine, the pressure on the inside has got to be greater than the pressure on the outside. And Paul says we have this treasure in earthen vessel, that the power may be of God, not of us. We're just earthen vessels. We are clay pots. We're easily broken. We're fragile. People can hurt us. People can offend us. But we've got to make sure that the pressure within us is of God. And I used that beautiful phrase in Greek. It's hyperbola dunamis, that this superabundant power, that dunamis power, is hyperbole. It's incredible. It's exceeding. That's not us. Nathan, we're not anything special. We both know that. But when God,
we like to think we are on the golf course at times.
yes, we're pretty handy on the golf course, man. But the truth is, the power is not of us. It's of God, and it's only when the power of God within us is greater than the pressure around us that we can survive in ministry.
And I guess that's the key, isn't it, there? I mean, why don't we just explore a little bit, I mean, maybe from both of you, how do you think then leaders can identify those pressure points? Because a lot of people will go through life, they're going through stuff, but they don't really know how to identify.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could share something about that.
Well, I spoke this morning about one of the things that can make us more susceptible to pressure is when we lose our passion and our joy, and we don't react with strength as leaders as we would have done had everything been going well internally, like Steve was saying. So some of the signs of a depleted joy or depleted passion is you're less generous. You just both in your time and your ability to connect with people and listen to people, but also just generous in life in general, what you have to give. You feel like you're less intimate with each other, and then we've got to watch that with married couples, because you're giving out and giving out, and you just got no energy for each other. You can feel like when you're speaking to people in church life, you don't want to go there because it takes too much energy. You feel like people are annoying you. And people annoy us, right? And they can easily wind you up and annoy you. Those are all signs of pressure building. Maybe you would overreact because it's got to come out somewhere. You would say something you wouldn't normally mean, and then immediately, hopefully, your spouse can pick up on it, or someone. That's why we need accountability around us. Will say, hey, you wouldn't normally react in that way. And it's taking time to have those moments where we're thinking, what's going well? What's actually not going well? We'll have a date night regularly, but we'll also regularly look at what is our strengths, what are the things that are depleting us right now, what do we need to arrest, what do we need to change, where have the boundaries got a bit blurred.
Can I just on that, because did you find that awkward to start with when you started doing that together? Was that like...
Steve did, I didn't.
Yeah.
I love having those conversations.
This is why I'm asking the question.
You would find it awkward.
Because I'm like, this awkward. So Steve, how did you get past that? Because I think it's really beneficial, but I think people would stop at the this is awkward
Yeah.
moment.
Initially, what it was, Rachel wanted to write this down and talk about this, and I can't think of anything worse than having a night off doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think over the 30 years, you've realised what sustains you, and you've got to get through some of that stuff. So we have built rhythms.
Yes,
Rhythms
yes.
are. Your dad says rhythms are more important than encounters. So every week we'll have a date night, but it's not just the weekly rhythm of our date night. It's the daily rhythm of when we first get in from work, we debrief and we'll take a few moments, and on a regular basis we'll go for a walk together. We just had a time of prayer and fasting in our church, and so we would regularly go out and walk and pray every morning. And it's amazing how it just, even though it's difficult, it can feel awkward, it actually breeds and brings intimacy, and that's a very good thing. So
that helps. That helps.
yeah.
But and you also just picking up on these pressure points. So you're talking about that, and I think when you say things like, "Oh, we're less generous," we think we have to be like really down. But you use this phrase that's come into the dictionary, and is used this word "meh."
Meh.
Yeah, which is like it's not like it's this deep dive. It's just
Deep drama.
I just feel meh.
Yeah, and the majority of people at the minute, we've got a bit of a fuel crisis, energy crisis in our country, but it's crept into people's lives a little bit, a bit like I haven't really got the energy, and I think a lot of us can feel that, just meh.
Yeah.
It's not really depressed, I'm not really, but just, and it's actually really dangerous because over a period of time that creeps into a marriage, creeps into a team, creeps into a leader, and that then the pressure points are more likely to be obvious because there's no fuel there
Yeah.
to give.
And you mentioned actually, if I can just pick up on that, because that's a great thought, that around this idea that when you're facing times like that you do something, that you go away, you spend a bit of time, and you ask yourself I think it's 6 questions or 9 questions, all beginning with who, what, where. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm just remembering now. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's a great practice that will help leaders just to then think about those pressure points, but actually what I need to do with them. So can you help me to share that?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I've talked about the importance of accountability and being vulnerable. And I shared a teary moment where I felt like I was in a lot of pain with my back, but also my joy had gone. I was just giving out. So the encounter with God, being vulnerable with close friends and leaders around, that was the first thing. The second thing was very practical. It was, call it an hour to empower. So the Holy Spirit can empower us in a service, and in my bedroom that I described as a teenager, or with friends. But actually, I go to a cafe or I'll go to a room in our church, and I write down. There's actually probably 8 questions, and they're all W's. And it's who, 3 who's. Who can I encourage on my team? Who is maybe on the bench that I can bring out at the minute? Who is I can actually practically send a text message, encourage them. And then I ask them what. So I haven't got my notes in front of me, so I'm trying to remember. Ask myself, what am I currently doing well, and what can I improve on? What are the areas that are weak at the minute in my life, in our lives, my girls, in our church general, in the areas that we oversee, in our leadership in Soul Church. And then I will ask, my final question is, why am I doing this? Why? And we've got to ask that question, why? Am I called to do this? But jotting down these things of the who, and then the where am I going? Where am I going next week? Yes, we've got a vision as a church and as leaders, but what does that look like for me? Where am I going, and how am I communicating that to a team? So those are good questions to ask regularly, because otherwise we can just go from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing.
Yeah, it's about creating those rhythms, isn't it? Really?
It is. Yeah,
Fantastic.
no, it's really good. Steve, you also introduced something really interesting, this word pro-entropic. I wonder if you'd explain that, because actually, and how does that relate to our leadership? Just begin to explain that.
Yeah, the word pro-entropic, my brother is educating me about the world of shares. He's been dealing in shares for many years, and so he's trying to bring me up to speed. And poor guy, pray for him. And he sent me an article one day. He said, "You need to read this, really interesting." And within it, there was a word, and it said that these shares are pro-entropic. I thought, what the heck does that mean? So pro-entropic comes from entropy. The law of entropy is that everything left to itself tends towards disorder. Look at your teenager's bedroom. It just tends towards disorder.
Chaos.
And the share market for the last year has been in chaos. Everything's been dropping. And most shares don't like it. Their value is lost. But there are some shares that investors look for. And they are the shares that are pro-entropic. In other words, they love the chaos because when everything else is in chaos, they increase in value. So everyone is looking for the pro-entropic shares. And it sparked off in my mind that God's power is pro-entropic.
Yeah, very good.
That when the world is in chaos, it's in our weakness that his power is made perfect.
Yeah.
And so I love that thought that God's power works when we feel weak, when everything is crashing down around us. God's power is pro-entropic.
Yeah.
And it's about having that strength within. That's what you were chatting to our leaders about. And it can't be thinking of this question, and I think it's an important question to ask, because there's a lot of leaders out there going through different things. And I guess leaders face different pressures in ministry, pressures at home, pressures all sorts of places. What do you think? What would be your advice to a leader who maybe feels they can't cope with the pressure?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an important question, and we can evade it, and we can think, well, let's just do these few things. But what do we need to do with them?
Look, I'll give you an answer first and you add to that.
Yeah,
I
jump
remember being in one of these moments, and it was about 15 years ago. And, you know, my mental health for the first and really only time had really started to take a dip to the point where the stress of the workplace was just becoming too much. And I'd been to see a doctor, and they had prescribed me sleeping pills and antidepressants. This was the first time. And I remember, you know, I thought, well, I'll go for a run every night. And I'd run for an hour and a half. But literally my mind would not stop. Just, I couldn't turn it off at night. I couldn't sleep. And so that what I would say to every leader is you need to talk to somebody.
That's the key.
Especially as men, we don't do it. But
Yeah.
I had the courage to talk, and I was really honest to Scott. And then he gave me the right advice for where I was at. And I made some significant changes as a result of that. But it really helped me, and it actually set me free. So the first thing is talk to somebody that can help you, not your barber. Talk to someone professionally trained or a pastor that you trust.
That's really important. I think we spend a lot of our time coaching pastors, but also pastoring pastors. And it's these moments where I think we get so used to giving out. And I shared an example of that today. You give out, and then when someone ministers to you, it's actually quite overwhelming because you're not used to that. And so as pastors and leaders, it's really important that it doesn't need to be a lonely journey. I think years ago, pastoring seemed to be like you can't let people too close, you know, but those days are gone. We actually need to lead with vulnerability now because it attracts people and they connect with your weaknesses more than they are impressed by your strengths. So it's really important that you talk to someone. We actually recommend, we've got a really great psychologist, a trauma therapist that we refer people to, and counselling. I'd recommend counselling, someone that understands the church world. The other thing that I would recommend is make sure you're strengthening your strengths. Because I think as pastors and leaders, we think we have to do everything. You know, what do they say? Jack of all trades, master of none. And that's the biggest way to burn out. You've got to look, what's the strength of your heart? I talked today in Ecclesiastes that talks about keep busy with the joy of your heart. You'll not be affected unduly, the Bible says, by life if you keep busy with the joy of your heart. So we often talk to pastors, what's your strength? What's your strength? And then we have to be able to give place for people to fill the gaps where our weaknesses are so that we can really flourish in our areas of strength.
We did a great thing actually at the end. You did a great thing with us at the end of your session today, staff retreat. We said this was behind the scenes, but you did, you split us, you got us into groups, and that was the men together and the women together and into smaller groups, and just asking the question of each other, you know, where's your passion? You know, depleted, or where's your enthusiasm gone? And just an ability, you know, we were in a group of 4, just an ability to share openly. You know, like you said, sometimes we're not very good at this as men. And sometimes if those groups mixed, you highlighted it, that sometimes the women sit back and don't share as much. And it was just a real powerful moment. And it's just, you know, just that ability to be vulnerable with people you trust.
Yes.
And so it doesn't have to be like, oh, I've got the big issue. It could be I've just recognised a pressure point, or I've just, my passion's waning.
Yes.
Let me chat to
absolutely.
someone.
Yeah, it's not about waiting till things are really, really at a level where you need that type of help. It could be if you're working that stuff through as you go, then that's the thing that sustains you as well. It's having about
Absolutely.
like ongoing accountability and vulnerability with each other.
Yeah.
And that
So-
takes great courage.
It does. It
It
does.
actually takes a strong leader to admit vulnerability.
Yeah.
Just before we move on from that, we
go for
both
it.
have mentors
Yeah.
who we catch up with regularly. So mine's Dr.
Very
Van
good.
Shaw in Australia, who's my master's supervisor.
Yeah.
And I'll regularly just talk to him, and he'll check in and he prays for us every day, because we all need someone
Yes.
and somewhere that we can go to just on a regular basis, not just when crisis hits.
Really important.
It's an ongoing rhythm that we have.
Yeah.
We've got to keep growing and keep learning and keep being challenged.
Yeah. So you guys, you're involved in lots of different things, leadership-wise, coaching, writing. We want to pick up on the writing in a moment. So I think I had a question down here. Rachel, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Now, we've heard a little bit about the church stuff and all that. I was sort of thinking, could the answer be that Steve kicks you out? I don't know.
Yeah, he actually used to sometimes.
That's the real answer.
I'm a bit of a night owl, to be honest. I've had to learn the discipline of getting up early in the morning.
But just trying to think, like, you know, what's the thing? I mean, obviously you've shared some of your things that really grip you. But what else grips you? You know, as you're working with people and writing books, you're writing for a reason. So let's explore that a little
Yes,
bit.
what gets me out of the bed in the morning is to help people, help women especially, but people in general, find what their passion is or their calling is and see it fulfilled. All of the time I'm talking about calling, passion, dreams. I think we're put on this earth for yes, we're to be the hands and feet of Jesus, but St. Irenaeus says that the glory of God is a man or woman fully alive. We can actually only be fully alive, I believe, when we're fulfilling purpose. And we're shaped in a specific way. And I used to try and be like Steve in my preaching and communication and teaching. We're completely different. But when I relaxed into, I've just got to love people and empower them. And so that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, is the thought that I want to help someone today see their dreams fulfilled. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know. So Dave mentioned you're writing your second book.
Yeah. Can't believe I'm doing that, because I'm not really a great writer. He's a better writer.
No,
You've got to write yours.
Great, yeah.
Run your book at the moment.
Let's come on.
We'll get onto that in a bit. But yeah, just share a little bit more about the book. Maybe what is the reason for writing it as well?
Yeah, so it's the second book. The first book was Soul Time. It's when your soul needs a holiday.
Yep.
And it was written during lockdown with my daughter Melody. And we were talking about when your soul's depleted, when your soul needs to find love, when your soul needs encouragement, when you've just met. We talk about that, you know, when you're just flat. And so there's been some great feedback from that. It's a devotional. This one is called Finding Your Voice, or Find Your Voice. And it's more about, I started running a course for women called Find Your Voice. Just last year. And so by the end of last year, 60 plus women, I kept it small, each group, because I wanted to have the connection. 60 plus women have grown in confidence in finding their voice. Finding your voice is a combination of who you are, finding who you are, and what you're called to do. And I think women, young people, especially, I love speaking with young people. There were some young people on the course. It takes them a while to grasp hold of, because there's so many things that they could do. What is the thing that really makes them tick? What were they designed for? But then also changing seasons of life. Women that are empty nesters, or you move locations like Steve and I have a few times, transition. Many of us are in transition, and it looks different. What does the outworking of finding your voice look like in a new season? So it's that, finding your voice.
So it's not a singing book.
It's not. Although I used to lead worship many years ago, and I admire people like Whitney Houston, but it's very sad. She had an amazing voice, but my question would be, when I watched her documentary, did she actually find her voice? You know, she died at 48. Her young daughter, 22, sadly, in a similar way. She would regularly say, when I watched the documentary, can I be me? Can I be me? And I think this can be a battle often for women, is we're seen as nurturers, and we've got so many hats and so many roles, and we're giving out and giving out. But what do actually I want? We give out, we forget to invest within.
So what do you think is the problem you're trying to solve then? As you think of your book, you're trying to encourage people to find their voice, find who they are, their gifts, their talents, their dreams. What else are you trying to solve there? Because obviously you've written it for a reason. What else?
I'm also trying to encourage women to be that for each other. So within the course, I've kept it small, kept it at 15. I'm hearing stories all the time of women that are advocating for each other. Oh, can you come and speak at this? Or I've got this interview coming up. Can you pray for me? Or there's one girl that used to work in the corporate world, and she said her role was making rich people richer. And when she did Find Your Voice, she recognized that she had a teaching gift from a little girl that she actually needed to stir up. And she's doing teacher training. Wow. And she's one of the leaders in our youth and leads one of my daughters. And everybody says she's so much happier, so much fulfilled. She's got joy. She's just, her countenance is different because she's in her sweet spot.
Yeah, that's a great word.
Sweet spot. And if I can help women, yes, find their voice, but there's something about when you're in your sweet spot, you feel fulfilled. You can have a better marriage. You can have better relationships. Yeah. You're going to keep healthier. So your sweet spot is a combination of who you are, combination rather of your natural ability, your spiritual gifts, and the opportunity to outwork them. So sometimes we need God to open doors, but sometimes we can open doors for each other. And so that's what I talk about in the book.
No, that's really good. Yeah. When you shared that this morning, that was one of the key things that I kind of took away and also the ability to help others find their sweet spot as well. I think is a big thing. So in terms of the book, like if you were to give us, here's a key idea that I'd love people to take away from this book. If you would say, do you know what, this is the one, like whoever reads this is the thing I want you to take away. What would that be?
It would be the confidence to articulate who you are and what you're good at, the strengths, what you bring to the table, and then the courage to outwork it.
Great.
I like that. It's very good.
Really good.
And thinking of this idea of, you talked about like people within the church setting finding their sweet spot, where sometimes they're not finding that's an issue for them. Do you think it's a broader issue? Do you think it's like within society, within culture, you think ladies are struggling on that topic as well?
Yeah, look, I think in church generally and life in general, but in church we can get busy looking after people, and that's important. And God gives us the strength to do that. We can go from the next event to the next thing, and we keep going and going. And even in the corporate world, they're all about, success. And on the journey of getting to what we want to do in church or in the corporate world, we can sometimes miss the people along the way that are not fulfilling their potential. And so Maxwell says, like you just talked about it, Nathan, a successful person finds their sweet spot, but a successful leader helps other people find their sweet spot. And I think, whether it's the church or not, as a leader, if you can notice when someone is not passion-fueled, they're not going to be given any outcomes if they're not in their sweet spot. And so I think we have a responsibility as pastors and leaders just to really help people and not just think we need you to fill gaps. Yes, there's a certain amount of that, but it's if we can really get you in your zone, it's going to be more effective.
You get so much more out of that, don't you?
Yeah.
That's the thing that's going through my mind as you're sharing there, is that there could be people who are listening or leaders, and actually they're doing a role, they're doing a job, but really the question we were asking is, are they really in their sweet spot? And if they're not, I guess what is it they need to do? And how can we help them get into the right? So rather than just doing a task, they're doing something that actually they're passionate about. Because it brings that energy in life, doesn't it? Really,
Absolutely. Well, before we get to our quick fire questions, I actually wanted to add an extra question because we're behind the scenes. I know behind the scenes staff meeting and staff retreat, and I know lots of people and leaders will be listening to this who might prepare for a staff retreat or a staff away day or something in the future. I just wondered if there was anything in like your preparation for coming here that you did differently to, like, I'm preparing a message on a Sunday, or even to talk to the staff on a like every week or whatever. I just wondered if you'd dive into that, or if it looked the same. Just what did you do really? So yeah.
Well, for me, I think the importance of a staff retreat is building relationship and having those moments, vulnerable moments. But for us, for me, definitely what I bring, I feel like people need a shot in the arm. They need a booster. They need an immunization. They need encouragement. They need tools. So it's not so much. I don't think the drawing board stuff, the work as much. It's more the inspiring and the motivating and the encouragement. And you guys have done that brilliantly.
Yeah, and staff in churches work so hard, and to come here to this beautiful venue, which Pastors Paul and Jeannie have, put us in, and it's been an absolute joy because it's the perfect setting. It's in a nice area.
You really place value on your team.
It's a good balance between sessions and relaxing and having fun, having an epic quiz, trying to school you on the pool table.
The girls sat in the hot tub.
So be intentional, place value on your staff, really think it through, and make sure that they walk away having had some fun, but also some great input. I think those are the keys to a great staff retreat.
Great.
Hey, well, thanks for sharing those. We do have some quick fire questions.
Okay.
The reason they're quick fire is because you got to answer them quite quickly. Okay, so
we had one guest. We did quick fire questions, and it lasted longer than the other part of the interview.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a triple.
And if that was you, we loved it.
Yeah, we loved it. But we're not going to say who you were.
No.
Okay, so here they are.
Any
particular order?
Okay.
Here we go. So, what are you most excited about and challenged about at the moment?
My new book, it would be. But I'm both excited and challenged because it's out of my comfort zone.
When's that new book come out, actually?
Mid-April.
2023.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the things I'm really excited about is seeing Rachel in a sweet spot. I believe as a husband, the first gift that I've got to steward is my wife. And so seeing her stepping into this new zone, she's away the next 3 weekends in different cities around the place. So seeing her thrive and come alive is something I am incredibly excited
She's my
about.
greatest cheerleader, literally. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without
So when you are away then, are you on the golf course? Is that why you're cheering her on so much?
I do get a bit more freedom to hit the golf course. That is true.
Yeah, we just want to think, remember behind the scenes, we're digging deep here, do you know what I mean?
Used to be looking after the kids, but now they can look after themselves.
They're the days. Give us your top 2 book recommendations and a quick why. So,
okay, one off the top of my head is Rabbi Jonathan Sacks on leadership. So obviously he's a Jewish rabbi, but gives some incredible insights from the Pentateuch. That's the first 5 books of the Bible on leadership. So it's a fascinating read. Currently reading Watchman Nee, Sit, Walk, Stand.
That's a good
really old one.
Yeah.
But again, just brilliant. Don't try and do this out of your own strength. It's who you are in Christ that matters.
great.
15 Laws of Growth by John Maxwell had a big impact on my life, and it's something I dip into every now and again to keep growing. Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, reading at the minute. I love her books, Importance of Vulnerability.
Awesome.
Good book recommendation.
Yeah.
So, hey, your favourite meal of choice?
Oh, that's easy.
Thai.
Thai. It would be a spicy chicken Penang.
And you're both the same.
Yeah, love
Both
Thai.
Thai.
Yeah.
Love it.
Date
Which
night
makes
would
date
definitely
night
be Thai.
easy.
Really
Or
easy.
Indian. We do like Indian. You get good Indian.
So you don't. I guess you don't have the conversation as much as we have in. What do you want to eat? And when you're kind and you say, no, you choose. You choose because
And it
we
lasts
have
forever.
different
That's the
favourites.
problem.
Yes.
That lasts forever.
The problem is Rachel will always
always
want
have half of what
of
he
whatever
has.
I want. But I like spicy, she likes mild. So that's where the negotiation is for us.
Right.
You prefer me often, don't you? You're so kind with that. I'll have a bit of yours. You can have a bit of mine.
Yeah. Oh, good. good.
Final question.
Yeah. Final quick fire question. And I know you mentioned some of the hobbies that you did earlier, but what would be something maybe that you've not mentioned or you want to highlight again that helps you to stay fresh in ministry and life?
Well, Monday we went to the beach. We wrapped up, we got a coffee and a cream cake, and we walked along the beach.
You have a special name for Mondays, don't you?
It's our Mawston Mondays,
Yes.
hashtag Mawston Monday.
There we
Yeah,
go.
we always go out because when you stay home, there's always a job that needs doing. So yeah, we love the beach, whether it's in England or in Australia. Very different temperatures, but
Yeah, we love travel. We love getting out. One of the things we did a few years ago is we went to Oslo for the day in Norway. So we got a cheap flight. It cost us $9.99 out, $9.99 back, and we went sledging in Norway. So I encourage you, get out of your environment, get out, see some of the amazing places in the world, and do something different.
Fantastic. Hey, well, it's been great to have you guys with us, Steve and Rachel Mawston, on the Church Explained podcast. We're almost at a wrap now, aren't we?
We are.
I think we are.
What's the best way for people to connect with
Very
you
important.
guys?
Through our website, stephenrachel.co.uk, or our Instagrams. However, or at Soul Church.
Yeah.
Come and visit us at our church. It's amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been so good to be together on the Church Explained podcast. Again, a big thank you to Steve and Rachel. And again, wherever you're consuming this content, like, review, subscribe, follow if you're on Spotify. That's a shout out to someone who's mentioned, what do I do on Spotify? Well, you can follow along with the podcast on there. And we have loads of free resources that are available for you at icon.church/open. They're free and available for you to use in your churches as you please. But it's been great to be together on the Church Explained podcast, and we will see you next time as we gather together.